Hello, everybody. If you're watching this when it's being posted up, today is April 5th, 2020. Happy Palm Sunday, everybody. We are about a month into the coronavirus quarantine here in Washington State, and Governor Inslee has just extended the stay home, stay healthy order until May 4th. May 4th. So, you, along with myself, we have been sheltering at home. We are staying away from large gatherings. And we are only going out for essential functions, like grocery shopping, doctor's visits, going to work. Only the essentials. The recent state of events has been making us all rethink what is essential in my life. Suddenly vacations and eating out at nice restaurants, going to shopping malls, it doesn't seem all that essential anymore. Designer clothes, buying the latest gadgets, luxury cars, these are not essential anymore. We're really starting to rethink what is essential. I hope that even now, during this lockdown, even though we're not able to meet together as a church in person for a month now, I hope that still you are making your faith essential. That you are finding that worship is essential. However it is that you spend each day connecting with God, hearing His Word, praying and maintaining an intimacy with Him, especially now, worship is essential. Worship is priceless. Worship is a priority. Today's passage, we meet up with Mary and Martha. Last week we saw them mourning and grieving their brother Lazarus. And this time Mary gives a very expensive and extravagant gift to Jesus. She makes an extraordinary act of worship. So let's read this together, would you? John chapter 12, verse 1. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus therefore came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. So they gave a dinner for him there. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those reclining with him at table. Mary, therefore, took a pound of expensive ointment made from pure nard, and anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. So the story of Christ being anointed with expensive perfume by a woman, this story is recorded in all four Gospels, but in each account it's told slightly differently. Luke tells us that the story happens at the house of Simon the Pharisee, and he says that the woman is a sinner. Matthew and Mark tell us that this happens at the house of Simon the leper in the town of Bethany, but they detail how the woman actually anoints Jesus' head with oil. And of course today we are looking at John's account. So this story is recorded in all four Gospels, and each of the four accounts add these different details. Now there are ways to read these four stories and to harmonize them and explain them so that they match up all together. But if you do that, you begin to miss out on the details and the differences that each Gospel writer wants to highlight. See, Luke specifically wants us to see that Jesus has the power to forgive sin. Matthew and Mark want to depict the anointing of a king. And John wants us to focus on the act of worship itself. It is extravagant. It is exquisite. It is essential. John gives us the detail that this is a pound of expensive ointment made from pure nard. So a little bit of background: Himalayan spikenard or musk root. This is an aromatic oil derived from a flowering plant that only grows at very certain elevations in the Himalayan mountains. As you know, the Himalayas are found in Tibet, China, and India. And the flower that grows there is called Nardostachys jatamansi. This is very particular flower, and when you process it, you extract the scent out of it, the essence. And what you're left with is this very aromatic, amber-colored, essential oil. So nard is literally an essential oil. And as you can imagine, it takes a huge quantity of this very rare flower, right, transported from this very, very long distance away, just to get a little bit of this very precious perfume. So obviously this perfume, this ointment, is very, very expensive. And Mary, she takes a pound of this perfume, a litra. It's about 11.5 ounces. And she anoints Jesus' feet with this perfume. So I want to show you this. This is a bottle of cologne that I've had since 1999. Okay, that's over 20 years ago. This bottle of CKB, and I have used this same bottle of cologne at all of my high school dances, college formals, even my wedding. And you know, I use a dab of it. I'll show you right now. I just take a dab, right, and I put it on my neck. And it smells great. It smells really great. This is my favorite cologne that I've ever smelled. And I have been using this bottle of cologne for 20 years, okay? And it's still about a third full. And I know that probably says more about me than the cologne, but here's the crazy part, okay? This bottle of cologne that I've been using for 20 years, the bottom of it says that this is only 3.4 floral ounces. So this bottle of cologne is about a third of the size of what Mary poured out on Jesus' feet all at once. So if you were here with me, if we had smell-o-vision, you'd be able to smell this. It smells great. That was just a little dab of it. All right? But imagine 3 of these bottles poured out all over, just poured out. Or can you imagine how that aroma, that perfume would have filled the house? That aroma, the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. And then John records that she wipes his feet with her hair. This is an act of great devotion. You know, in ancient times, a woman's hair was seen as her glory. The part of herself that really defined her beauty. It defined her beauty. So for Mary to wipe Jesus' feet with her hair, this was this very humbling, this beautiful act of worship. It was not sexual. It was beautiful. And there was nothing more that she could have done to express her love, her gratitude for Christ. Her worship was precious. She poured out her most precious possession. You know, when's the last time we gave the Lord something truly precious to us? Something truly precious. I mean, sure, we give him our 10%, but that leaves us 90% for us to live very, very comfortably. We give him our Sunday mornings, but that leaves us 95% of our week to do whatever we want, however we want to. But Mary, she gave everything she had, 100% of her most precious thing. You know, she didn't save some of it. She broke the jar and she poured it all out on his feet. For her, worship was precious. Worship was precious. Worship was essential. She understood that, and she did something about that. She did what she could. Let's continue our story. Verse 4. But Judas Iscariot, one of the disciples who was about to betray him, said, "Why was this ointment not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor?" In Matthew and Mark's Gospels, they note that it is the disciples that are indignant. All of the disciples are indignant with what this woman has done. But John's account wants to specifically name Judas Iscariot, the one who was about to betray him. I'm guessing Judas, he instigated. He instigated this ruckus. He caused this big stink in the entire group of disciples. I mean, why did you waste this ointment? We could have sold it for 300 denarii. What a waste. Look how careless she was. Look at all the people that we could have helped instead. Look at what she did. What a waste of money. So 1 denarii was basically 1 day's wages. And Judas, being the very shrewd accountant that he had calculated the exact amount that this ointment could have sold for. You know, he was probably eyeballing this bottle of ointment the moment that Mary walked into the room with it. Now, if we use a modern day equivalence, and assuming we're talking about a minimum wage here in Washington State and someone working full time, $12 an hour is the minimum wage, times 8 hours a day, that's full time. For 300 days, that would give us $28,800 US. Okay, in modern day terms, that's how much this ointment was worth. $28,800. Now think about that. Think about what kind of ministry we could do with $30,000. $30,000. I mean, gosh, we can send an entire overseas missions team to go and share the gospel. $30,000. We could buy a church van that would help us transport seniors, right, to and from church on Sunday mornings. $30,000. We could upgrade our sound equipment for $30,000. There's a lot that we could do for $30,000, you know? But that's thinking like Judas, not like Jesus. Thinking like Judas, not like Jesus. Remember a couple of years ago, there were those MasterCard commercials that were always running on TV, and they would list the prices of basic things. You know, a cup of coffee, $4, a bag of chips, $2.50, a tank of gas, $30. Spending time with your loved ones, priceless, right? Priceless. You know, the point of those commercials was to state that there are some things which money can't buy, but worship is one of those things that money can't buy, right? Worship is priceless. Worship is priceless. I mean, sure, money helps. We can make things more professional, more streamlined, but money can't buy a heart of worship. You know, the slick production values, they can't create authenticity and heartfelt devotion. The convenience that we can create, it can't make us love God more. In fact, it often does the opposite. Money can't buy the heart of worship. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be good stewards and strive for excellence in all that we do. We ought to. But I'm saying that we shouldn't be so calculative about it. We can't assume that a bigger budget is better, because sometimes less is more. Right? Worship is priceless. Or you can't put a number on devotion. Verse 6. Judas, he said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. and having charge of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. So verse 6 here in John's Gospel is the only place that this gives us this little detail, and it further reveals Judas's guilt. Judas, he wanted to use this as an opportunity to cover up his thievery. He wanted this huge influx of cash into the treasury so that, all of his petty theft, his stealing would be overlooked. Sadly to say, this kind of situation, it still happens today. There are accounts, there are stories of church treasurers going to jail for embezzling church funds. Right? These massive amounts of money that some of these churches have. I've also read these stories of pastors. They write off their own personal expenditures. Right? They're taking advantage of the trust of church members. It happens. It still happens today. Wherever there is money involved, there is temptation. Nobody is immune. And it seems like Judas was very much motivated by money. Motivated by money. We should not be. How can you put a price tag on the glory of God? How can you put a price tag on the glory of God? So Jesus responds to this. Jesus said, leave her alone. Verse 7. Leave her alone so that she may keep it for the day of my burial. Okay, this is the ESV translation. He scolds Judas for shaming Mary's act of devotion. Leave her alone. Right. What she did is a beautiful thing. Let her keep it for the day of my burial. Now, the translation of this sentence is a little bit tricky. Literally, it says, leave her alone. She intended to keep it for the day of my burial. Right. She wanted to keep it. She wanted to keep it. Now the question becomes, what is it? What is she? What was she trying to keep for this day? Was it the perfume? Was it the honor of the act of this pouring out? Now, personally, I think the most natural way of understanding it, what is it, is how the NIV renders it. It was intended that she should save this perfume for the day of my burial. So the NIV, the editors of the NIV, they think that the it refers to the perfume. And personally, I think that's probably the closest, probably the most correct interpretation and the most correct translation. She was going to use this perfume for Jesus' embalming, but instead she chose to pour it out in advance, at this moment, in a show of great devotion. Because Jesus is here. He's here right there. He's right there, right now. And now is the time to worship. This idea lines up with Jesus' next statement about now. Right? He says, for the poor you always have with you, but you do not always have me. Jesus isn't saying that helping the poor isn't important. It is. It is something that we're called to do, and we ought to. But he is there now, and worship is a priority. So he says, let her worship. Let her pour out this precious ointment at her feet. Now is the time to worship. Not later when he's gone. Not only on Sunday mornings. Now is the time to worship. Now is the time to worship. Worship is precious. Worship is priceless. Worship is a priority. Worship is essential. Years ago, a wise pastor once told me that the sign of a Christian's love is not measured by the length of their knowledge of the scriptures or the breadth of their ministry and their service, but by the depth of their worship. This coronavirus lockdown has us all questioning what is essential in our life. Eating, sleeping, working, resting, relaxing, taking care of yourself. Those are all essential. They are. But I hope that you will also make worship an essential part of your life. Worship is the most beautiful thing that we can do here on earth. It pleases God. It is a pleasing aroma to God. It is a foretaste of heaven. It also grounds us. It restores our soul. Worship is essential. And by worship, I'm not limiting it to like singing Christian songs or serving in church ministries, doing Christian-y things. That the worship should not be limited to that. Right? Worship can be anything that we do intentionally for God. That is the sacrifice. That is beyond our ordinary. It is extraordinary. It is essential that we live beyond ourselves, that we live for something greater, that we live for someone greater, someone more glorious than ourselves. This week, I want to challenge you to do one act of devotion. And I want you to share it with your small group this week. What you did, how it went. Do one act of devotion. Okay? Intentionally do something outside of your normal routine, something that you wouldn't typically do, as an act of worship to God. Maybe you do go sing a hymn on the way to work. Maybe normally you listen to the news or whatever of your favorite radio station. Sing a hymn instead. Make that an act of worship. Or go help your spouse with a chore that they would normally do. Make that an act of worship. Or do your daily devotions, your scripture readings together as a family. Make that an act of devotion. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It doesn't have to be flashy or churchy. But whatever it is that you choose to do it as unto the Lord for the glory of God. Do it and offer it up to Him and say, Lord, you are precious. Lord, you are priceless. Lord, you are a priority in my life. Stay safe, everybody. Stay home. We will connect again. We'll be doing a live stream next Sunday, Easter Sunday, and we'll give you details to that. But whatever you do, I want you to remember that worship is essential. Okay, take care, everybody. We'll see you next week.